Welcome back to part 2 on how I became a borrowed wife. And if this is your first time here, go watch part 1 before continuing. And trust me, you will enjoy this story a whole lot more. Now, let me continue the story on how I became a borrowed wife on paper, a stranger in reality, and someone who fell in love when I least expected it. I honestly thought that would be the last time I would ever see him. People meet strangers every day, some leave an impression, but others become a memory before the day ends. I had already decided that he belonged to the second category. The following morning felt surprisingly peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I woke up without a heavy feeling on my chest. Maybe because I had finally poured out my heart to someone who knew absolutely nothing about me. There was something comforting about talking to a stranger. They had no expectations, no opinions, and no history about you. Amara was thrilled seeing me looking like myself again. She practically pushed me out of the apartment, insisting I spend the day outside instead of hiding indoors like I had been doing for weeks. I didn't have anywhere important to be, so I decided to do something completely ordinary. I went grocery shopping. It sounds funny now, right? But pushing a shopping trolley through a crowded supermarket alleys felt strangely therapeutic. Life had become so complicated that sometimes things as simple as comparing cereal brands felt like a luxury. I was halfway through one of the alleys when Fate decided to interrupt my thoughts again. I reached for a box on the shelf at the exact same moment someone else did. That instant our hands brushed each other. I looked up. It was him, the man from the club. For a brief moment, both of us simply stared at each other, almost amused by how impossible the coincidence felt. He looked completely different in daylight. Gone was the exhausted man sitting alone with a glass of whiskey. Standing before me was someone who looked completely composed, effortlessly elegant, and surprisingly approachable. Dressed in a crisp white shirt with neatly folded sleeve and a perfectly tailored dark trousers, he carried himself with a quiet confidence rather than arrogance. The sadness that was there, it was still on his face, but it had not completely disappeared. It was simply better hidden. This time, we spoke without the loud music and flashing lights, and without the distraction that surrounded us that night. I found myself asking him about his mother, which I almost did immediately. The way his eyes softened told me everything before he even answered. She was still alive, still fighting, and he was carrying the weight of knowing that every day we have felt borrowed. And for a reason I couldn't explain, I felt relieved. Maybe because I knew what it was like to watch life fall apart while pretending everything was okay. He asked about me too. I admitted I was okay, but I felt left out in everything else. I wasn't ready to explain how one man had turned my years of hard work into silence. I simply told him that work was difficult lately, and surprisingly, he didn't ask me unnecessary questions. He respected the silence. That alone made me feel comfortable. When I asked what he did, he didn't answer. He just told me he ran a company, and that was simple. Not a long speech, no intention of money, no intention of having to impress me. If anything, he seemed eager to talk about every other thing except himself. Somehow that made me trust him even more. Before we went our separate ways, we finally exchanged names. It felt almost ridiculous that we had met twice before, and learning something so basic now, I felt really overwhelmed. And then I wheeled my trolley towards the checkout. I caught myself smiling without even realizing it. Not because I had met a handsome stranger again, not because I believed in fate, but because for the first time in what felt like forever, talking to someone hadn't felt like it was draining me. I didn't know just a few alleys away, he stopped walking too. He had looked back exactly at once, not long enough to seem obvious, just long enough to watch me disappear around the corner. That afternoon, when I returned to Amara's apartment carrying nothing more than groceries and a lighter hat, he returned to a life that refused giving him a moment to breathe, waiting for him without another reminder that time was running out. He had barely settled into his office when her call came in. His mom. According to him, that moment he heard her voice, he knew that she wasn't having a good day. She sounded weaker than usual, although she tried her best to hide it from him. "You're me," she said quietly. "When am I finally going to meet the woman you've been telling me about?" He forced himself to sound cheerful. "Soon, Mom, soon. You'll meet her soon." "Don't keep me waiting for too long," she replied. "I don't have all the time in the world." He laughed for her sake. He reassured her and he ended the call as soon as everything felt perfectly fine. But that moment, the silence was loud. He didn't know what to do. He sat staring at his phone in his office, wondering how much longer he could continue promising her for a woman who did not exist. His mother believed he had finally met someone. She believed that there was a woman he loved enough to marry, and because he had been desperate to give her hope, he allowed that lie grow far beyond what he could control. Now she wanted to meet this imaginary woman, not in a few months, not whenever he was ready, but soon as possible. And that was when he called his secretary into his office and asked her to arrange a few private introductions. He didn't explain why, he simply told her that he needed women who were presentable, discreet, and willing to consider an unusual professional agreement. His secretary looked confused, but she knew better than to ask too many questions. Over the next few days, she arranged meetings with several women. Beautiful women, educated women, women who seemed perfect on paper, but none of them lasted long enough for a second in the meeting. One irritated him within few minutes, another appeared more interested in their $10 name than in the actual agreement, and then one spent most of her meetings secretly recording videos for social media. Apparently, Fikayomi Adetola was not an easy man to impress, or perhaps he had already started comparing every woman to someone he had met, even without realizing it. One afternoon, while his secretary stood in his office, waiting for him to sign some documents, she became distracted by a video playing on her phone. It was one of my old videos. I had attended a charity event for children, and someone that had already reposted a short clip of me speaking about how people deserved kindness, even when the world had given them very little of it. He recognized me immediately. The woman from the rooftop bar, the woman from the supermarket, the woman who had listened to him without asking for anything in return. He asked his secretary who I was. She told him my name and explained that I was an actress and showed him a few of my videos from my page. For a while, he said nothing. Then just as she was about to leave, he called her back. He told her to forget about arranging any more meetings. Instead, he wanted every public available detail she could find about me, my management contact, my business email, anything that could help him reach me professionally. That night, an email arrived into my inbox. The subject read, "Private business proposal from the $80 group." At first, I thought it was fake. Companies as large as the $80 group did not usually send emails to an actress whose career has been moving backwards for months. But the email looked official. It contained the company's address, the name of the executive office handling the meeting, and the request for me to attend a confidential discussion concerning the private promotional engagement. There was no mention of the marriage, no mention of his mother, and certainly no mention of the man I had met twice, even without knowing who he truly was. All I saw was the name of their $10 group and the possibility of a job that could rescue me from the financial mess I had been trying so hard to hide. I read the email 3 times before Amara returned home. The moment she entered the apartment, I practically dragged her towards my laptop. "Amara, look at this." She leaned closer and looked at the screen, reading the email, and she screamed even louder than I had ever heard. For the rest of the evening, we imagined everything the opportunity could bring: a brand campaign, a corporate advertisement, and perhaps an ambassadorial deal. And not once did either of us imagine that this meeting had nothing to do with my acting career. The following morning, I dressed like my future depended on it, and honestly, it felt like it did. I wore one of my best dresses, styled my hair carefully, and arrived at the headquarters almost 30 minutes early. The building alone was enough to intimidate me. It looked expensive. The glass walls, the polished floor, the quiet confidence of everyone walking through the reception as they belonged there. I introduced myself to the front desk and had explained that I received an invitation for a meeting. After confirming my name, the receptionist asked me to wait, so I sat there rehearsing answers to questions no one had even asked me yet. I kept reminding myself to look confident, to speak clearly, and to avoid appearing too desperate, even though desperation was exactly what brought me there. Eventually, a member of the staff escorted me upstairs. She led me through a long corridor and stopped in front of a large office, larger than Amara's entire apartment. The door opened and there he was. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I stared at him, trying to connect to the man behind the desk and to the stranger I met at the rooftop bar. "You?" I finally asked. His expression barely changed. "Miss Balogun, thank you for coming." That was how I discovered that the quiet man from the bar was Fikayomi Adetola, the owner of the company whose email had kept me awake all night with excitement. He invited me to sit, but there was something about his seriousness on his face that immediately made me uneasy. There was no marketing team in the room, no creative director, no documents bearing my photograph or details of the campaign. Only Fikayomi and a folder on his desk. A silence that felt too heavy for an ordinary business meeting. He did not waste his time pretending. He told me the truth about his mother and how seriously she was ill, and that she believed he had finally met someone, and her greatest wish was to see him married before she died. And he explained that he wanted that from me. "I need you to marry me for 30 days, he said calmly. It will be a legal agreement, but only on paper. You will be compensated, and with every condition, it will be clearly stated in the contract." I genuinely thought I had heard him wrongly. I stared at him, waiting for him to reveal the joke itself. He never did. He continued explaining the agreement as though he thought we were discussing a normal business transaction. Who could appear in public as a couple? Me? We would be legally married? I would meet his mother and convince her that he had finally found someone who he intended to build a life with. And when the agreed period ended, the marriage would end too. He assured me that he had no intention of pressuring me. "You are free to refuse," he said. "Take the contract home, read it carefully. If you decide to go with it, or if you're against it, there will be no consequences." Then he pushed a brown envelope across the desk. I looked down at it, unable to move. A few hours earlier, I had believed I was walking into the biggest professional opportunity of my career. Instead, I was being asked to become a temporary wife for a man I barely knew. I eventually took the envelope and left the office without even giving him an answer. But the moment I stepped outside the building, the weight of what he had proposed finally settled on my shoulders. I was an actress. People knew my face. If I married Fikayomi Adetola, it would not remain private for long. The blogs would find out, the public would have opinions, and when the marriage ended barely a month later, I would be the woman everyone would accuse of marrying a billionaire for money. But the money was exactly what I needed. My career was struggling, my bills were piling up, and inside that envelope was an amount large enough to change my life. And there was his mother, a dying woman whose final wish was to believe that her son would not be alone after she's gone. I knew that the agreement was built on a lie. Yet somehow, refusing it felt like turning my back on someone who had very little time left. By the time I returned to Amara's apartment, the excitement I had left my face completely. I placed the brown envelope on the table and sat in front of it for what felt like hours. My entire future seemed to be waiting inside those pages. My name, my reputation, my freedom, and enough money to solve almost every immediate problem in my life. I wish I could tell you that I looked away from that contract and immediately walked away. I wish I could tell you that I knew that no amount of money was worth entering a marriage built on pretense. But as I sat there, staring at the envelope, I already knew the truth. Walking away was not going to be easy as it should have been. But my decision is another story for part 3. And if you're enjoying this series, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think I should do. See you in part 3.